big money pumped into politicians' campaign coffers every single election cycle, and we know who gets all the big money, right? Those fat cat Republicans and their rich Wall Street buddies, always trying to defeat the poor Democrats who barely have pennies to rub together. Or at least that's what we're always led to believe. But is that the truth? Well, Richard Ryder has been keeping track of all that big money, and he joins me here in studio today. Richard, always good to have you with us. Chairman of San Diego Tax Fighters, at San Diego Tax Fighters on Twitter, for those who would like to follow along. Billionaires, we tend to think that money is going to the big Republicans, because we've always heard that the Republicans are big business and that the Democrats are looking out for the little poor guy. But you looked up some of this, and in your research, you found what?
Well, it's not what you expect. It is quite different this particular election cycle, but it has always been that there is not a predominance of billionaires giving to the Republican Party. They actually give to both parties. In the 2012 cycle, it was close, but the Republicans did get more than the Democrats, but it's kind of a toss-up. This time around, it's gone the other way, pretty dramatically. This election cycle, it's kind of an off-year election cycle, but there's a lot of money still flowing.
Sure.
There was a study done where they looked at the people who were given the big bucks to either causes, liberal or conservative causes, or causes supported by the Democrat or Republican Party, and then cross-reference that with billionaires, the Forbes study. And they found 22 billionaires giving money out. And of course, the normal boogeyman to the left, and they've done it very well, is the Koch brothers. That's every time they want to bring up a boogeyman.
I'm still waiting for my check from the Koch brothers, because if there's not a day,
me too.
Not a day goes by, Richard, that I don't get a letter saying, I know you're funded by the Koch brothers. I'm like, please, yes. I say yes. I'm a capitalist. Send me money, Koch brothers. So far, no checks.
It ain't happening. But at any rate, what they found is of the 22 billionaires giving money, substantial money, to the two sides, 13 of the 22 were giving to Democrat causes. Only 9 were giving to Republican causes. Now, that's not close. That's like 59% giving to the Democrats, 41% giving to the Republicans.
Yeah.
That, I really don't have a problem with billionaires giving money. I know a lot of people get concerned about money in politics and so forth and so on. I don't mind them and giving money. I think that's part of America. You have free speech. You can pay for whoever you want to support or not support. But the problem is, what the left wants to do is to change that for people who give money to Republicans, not so much for the Democrats, and particularly not so much for the labor unions.
Right.
On the other side, we got this much more money than the billionaires are giving, is basically money taken from the workers against their will. I mean,
right.
Stated differently, they have no choice. And almost all that money is used, when it goes to politics, goes to Democrats. It's not like the billionaires who are giving money to both sides. They give money exclusively to the Democrats, and more money than the billionaires put in by far. And so we've already got a lopsided financial support for politicians, and they want to make it more lopsided by hamstringing, particularly as we've used the IRS and other problems like that, to hamstring the Republican causes, which is really, and their donors, which is unfair to say the least. And they like to say, oh, we're just looking out for the little man. No, they're not.
No, it's just the opposite. And it makes perfect sense if you just look at ultimate goals. The ultimate goal of the big, pro-big government people is to control the middle class. They already control the lower class. They are masters at controlling the lower class have been since Marx and way before that. They call them useful idiots. They use them for their votes and for their dues, and they take that money and it goes straight up to the bureaucrats, and we get that. But the dirty little secret is that they share a goal with the guys on Wall Street and K Street in wanting to control the economy. If the big banks and the big business has government in their pocket, then they know that they can have more control. They don't have to take their ideas to the people. They don't even have to take their products to the people. Richard, you and I know this. Just the Green Movement illustrated this. They only have to convince the politicians, and it's easy to do when you can buy them. And that's precisely what's going on here. And I think that's why more money is continuing to be funneled. We all know that Obama took more money from K Street than did Mitt Romney, which is interesting because you'd think Mitt Romney might have some connections there, but that wasn't the case. So it really is a case of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, and that all that's left for the GOP really is the middle, which is what the GOP has always said it is. So what can we do about this?
Well, it's hard to say if there's any ready solutions, but I think the first step is disclosure. This knowledge is public knowledge. It's available. You can find it. Anyone could have researched this.
It's opensecrets.org. You can look up these
right.
sites. And that's one thing I want to say, because not everybody that watches this show is a conservative or even a free market economics person. But you and I, this is all, it's right there, opensecrets.org. This article is on your site. Richard Ryder rants. You can Google it and come up with it. 2014, billionaires giving more to Democrats than Republicans. These are facts, backed up by facts. This is not our opinion. I think that's important to say. We don't even want people to take our word for it. We'd rather they self-educate, right?
And that's the number one thing that I think we have to continue to work on is what you're doing on your show. And of course, throughout the conservative movement, we're trying to reach out and I think educate the public. The other side is demagoguing. They skirt the facts, misuse the facts, and of course both sides can do that, but they make an effort actually to stifle the facts. Where's the reports in the New York Times about this distribution of the wealthy in terms of which side they're paying for? Or the Washington Post or the Los Angeles Times? It's never reported. But there's one other thing about business I do like to touch on. There are businesses that are free market, and there are businesses that are pro-business. And they seek, basically, it's called rent seeking. They try to use government to make profits that they can't make in the free market. The group that gets caught in the middle of all this is the small businesses. The small businesses are much more free market. And unfortunately, when people look at the business community, they look at the largest and the biggest abusers, companies like GE and other companies who are seeking federal subsidies or protections against the small businesses.
And they're judging the small appliance dealer down the street by those.
Yes. And so you have the small businesses can't afford the legal and accounting expertise that the big businesses can. They don't mind a labyrinth of regulations because they know a labyrinth of regulations holds down the small businesses and keeps the big businesses from facing competition. They do not like competition.
I think being inside politics with my husband, I've seen this over and over again where the big companies, whether it be the big cigarette dealers or the big alcohol producers or whatever, try to force the little guy out of the market over and over again. And they use the other side of the aisle. They use the Democrats to do that more often than the Republicans because they know that the Republicans are probably going to stand up for the free market, competition, small business. Very important concepts. I taught my little guy this weekend the definition of supply and demand because I thought, that's something that he needs to understand.
Absolutely.
The reason that he shouldn't trade this baseball card for that sporting good or whatever. It's important for people to understand. And the concepts are so basic. If most people would take time to read through an Economics 101 primer, they would see the world, I think, so differently, but most people who aren't economists don't take the time to do that, so they don't understand these concepts. The other thing that I wanted to get to with you quickly, if we have time, is this whole concept that you and I always talk about when I have you on my show, and that is that what happens in California doesn't stay in California, and much of what has happened in California is the spread of true socialism, thank you, Governor Brown, in the state of California. And as a result, we not only are losing our entertainment industry, billions in terms of what we've lost in the entertainment industry. You and I have talked about that. I interviewed Rob Schneider about that. I've interviewed other Hollywood celebrities about that on my show. But the other thing that we're losing is literally our rocket scientists are leaving the Golden State, taking up the Lone Star State. Why is this happening? And is anyone going to wake up to this fact and do something about Governor Brown?
It's a remarkable thing to watch Sacramento. It's like it's an isolated planet. It really isn't in touch with the rest of the state, and more important perhaps, looking at the rest of the nation. That's what I do. I spend my time comparing my state, California, which is an eighth of the people in the nation live in California, with the other 49 states. And the good thing about America is that we do have this cauldron of competition between the states. So we get to see socialism and the consequences. We get to see relative free markets. Nobody's really 100% free market, but Texas, compared to Texas, California is pretty much socialist,
still compare?
And Texas is pretty free market.
Exactly.
And it's a remarkable difference. Well, you're quite right about rocket scientists, and I like to say it's not rocket science to figure out which state you need to be in or whatnot. But in this case, it is rocket science because a company called Firefly, which is a very interesting name, it's based on a TV series. It's the name of the plane of the spaceship, is a private company that is developing rockets for launching satellites at about 1/3 the cost of government. I'm not talking about ours, which would be prohibitively expensive. I'm talking about Russia launches satellites for the private sector. They plan to do it for 1/3. They're in California. They're up in Hawthorne. Not for much longer.
Not
They've
much
already
longer.
they're already making arrangements to move
Right.
to outside Austin. They're going to take
Learn
the
from
money.
the rest. Learn from California, rest of the country.
And those are not
Thanks for
minimum
being-
wage jobs leaving
That's
either.
right. Thanks for being with us, Richard.